Franz, who seemed attracted by some invisible influence towards the Count, in which terror was strangely mingled, felt an extreme reluctance to permit his friend to be exposed alone to the singular fascination that this mysterious personage seemed to exercise over him, and therefore made no objection to Albert's request, but at once accompanied him to the desired spot, and, after a short delay, the Count joined them in the salon. "My dear Count," said Albert, advancing to meet him, "permit me to repeat the poor thanks I offered last night, and to assure you that the remembrance of all I owe to you will never be effaced from my memory. Believe me, as long as I live, I shall never cease to dwell with grateful recollection on the prompt and important service you rendered me, and also to remember that to you I am indebted even for my life." "My very good friend and excellent neighbor," replied the Count, with a smile, "you really exaggerate my trifling exertions. You owe me nothing but some trifle of 20,000 francs, which you have been saved out of your traveling expenses, so that there is not much of a score between us, but you must really permit me to congratulate you on the ease and unconcern with which you resigned yourself to your fate, and the perfect indifference you manifested as to the turn events might take." "Upon my word," said Albert, "I deserve no credit for what I could not help, namely, a determination to take everything as I found it, and to let those bandits see, that although men get into troublesome scrapes all over the world, there is no nation but the French that can smile even in the face of grim death himself." "All that, however, has nothing to do with my obligations to you, and I now come to ask you whether, in my own person, my family, or connections, I can in any way serve you?" "My father, the Comte de Mercer, although of Spanish origin, possesses considerable influence, both at the court of France and Madrid, and I unhesitatingly place the best services of myself, and all to whom my life is dear, at your disposal." "Monsieur de Mercer," replied the Count, "your offer, far from surprising me, is precisely what I expected from you, and I accept it in the same spirit of hearty sincerity with which it is made. Nay, I will go still further, and say that I had previously made up my mind to ask a great favor at your hands." Oh, pray name it. I am wholly a stranger to Paris, it is a city I have never yet seen. Is it possible, exclaimed Albert, that you have reached your present age without visiting the finest capital in the world? I can scarcely credit it. Nevertheless, it is quite true. Still, I agree with you in thinking that my present ignorance of the first city in Europe is a reproach to me in every way, and calls for immediate correction, but, in all probability, I should have performed so important, so necessary a duty, as that of making myself acquainted with the wonders and beauties of your justly celebrated capital, had I known any person who would have introduced me into the fashionable world, but unfortunately I possess no acquaintance there, and, of necessity, was compelled to abandon the idea. So distinguished an individual as yourself, cried Albert, could scarcely have required an introduction. You are most kind, but as regards myself, I can find no merit I possess, save that, as a millionaire, I might have become a partner in the speculations of M. Aguado and M. Rothschild, but as my motive in traveling to your capital would not have been for the pleasure of dabbling in stocks, I stayed away till some favorable chance should present itself of carrying my wish into execution. Your offer, however, smooths all difficulties, and I have only to ask you, my dear M. de Mercer, these words were accompanied by a most peculiar smile, whether you undertake, upon my arrival in France, to open to me the doors of that fashionable world of which I know no more than a Huron or a native of Cochin China? Oh, that I do, and with infinite pleasure, answered Albert, and so much the more readily as a letter received this morning from my father summons me to Paris, in consequence of a treaty of marriage. My dear Franz, do not smile, I beg of you, with a family of high standing, and connected with the very cream of Parisian society. Connected by marriage, you mean? Said Franz, laughingly. Well, never mind how it is, answered Albert, it comes to the same thing in the end. Perhaps by the time you return to Paris, I shall be quite a sober, staid father of a family. A most edifying representative I shall make of all the domestic virtues, don't you think so? But as regards your wish to visit our fine city, my dear Count, I can only say that you may command me and mine to any extent you please. Then it is settled, said the Count, and I give you my solemn assurance that I only waited an opportunity like the present to realize plans that I have long meditated. Franz did not doubt that these plans were the same concerning which the Count had dropped a few words in the grotto of Monte Cristo, and while the Count was speaking the young man watched him closely, hoping to read something of his purpose in his face, but his countenance was inscrutable, especially when, as in the present case, it was veiled in a sphinx-like smile. But tell me now, Count, exclaimed Albert, delighted at the idea of having to chaperone so distinguished a person as Monte Cristo, tell me truly whether you are in earnest, or if this project of visiting Paris is merely one of the chimerical and uncertain air castles of which we make so many in the course of our lives, but which, like a house built on the sand, is liable to be blown over by the first puff of wind. I pledge you my honor, returned the Count, that I mean to do as I have said. Both inclination and positive necessity compel me to visit Paris. When do you propose going thither? Have you made up your mind when you shall be there yourself? Certainly I have, in a fortnight or 3 weeks' time, that is to say, as fast as I can get there. Nay, said the Count, I will give you 3 months ere I join you. You see I make an ample allowance for all delays and difficulties. And in 3 months' time, said Albert, you will be at my house? Shall we make a positive appointment for a particular day and hour? Inquired the Count. Only let me warn you that I am proverbial for my punctilious exactitude in keeping my engagements. Day for day, hour for hour, said Albert, that will suit me to a dot. So be it, then, replied the Count, and extending his hand towards a calendar, suspended near the chimney-piece, he said, today is the 21st of February, and drawing out his watch, added, it is exactly 10:30. Now promise me to remember this, and expect me the 21st of May at the same hour in the forenoon. Capital, exclaimed Albert, your breakfast shall be waiting. Where do you live? Number 27, Rue du Helder. Have you bachelor's apartments there? I hope my coming will not put you to any inconvenience. I reside in my father's house, but occupy a pavilion at the farther side of the courtyard, entirely separated from the main building. Quite sufficient, replied the Count, as, taking out his tablets, he wrote down. Number 27, Rue du Helder, 21st May, 10:30 in the morning. Now then, said the Count, returning his tablets to his pocket, make yourself perfectly easy, the hand of your timepiece will not be more accurate in marking the time than myself. Shall I see you again ere my departure? Asked Albert. That depends. When do you leave? Tomorrow evening, at 5 o'clock. In that case I must say adieu to you, as I am compelled to go to Naples, and shall not return hither before Saturday evening or Sunday morning. And you, Baron, pursued the Count, addressing Franz, do you also depart tomorrow? Yes. For France? No, for Venice. I shall remain in Italy for another year or two. Then we shall not meet in Paris? I fear I shall not have that honor. Well, since we must part, said the Count, holding out a hand to each of the young men, allow me to wish you both a safe and pleasant journey. It was the first time the hand of Franz had come in contact with that of the mysterious individual before him, and unconsciously he shuddered at its touch, for it felt cold and icy as that of a corpse. Let us understand each other, said Albert, it is agreed, is it not? That you are to be at No. In the Rue du Helder, on the 21st of May, at 10:30 in the morning, and your word of honor passed for your punctuality? The 21st of May, at 10:30 in the morning, Rue du Helder, number 27, replied the Count. The young men then rose, and bowing to the Count, quitted the room.